Broicism is a distorted version of Stoicism that's become popular online, and it gets at this idea of sort of being an emotionless robot who just suppresses their feelings. But real Stoicism is more about understanding your emotions, not being ruled by them, and focusing on what you can control. It's about coming to terms with the fact that most of your suffering doesn't come from the outside world, but from inside your own head. If you've ever dealt with rejection, uncertainty, stress, anxiety, anger, shame, comparison, or regret, then you already know what I'm talking about. Most of the suffering from those things isn't a result of something that directly happened to you, but about how we interpret it, how we ruminate over it, obsess and punish ourselves. Well, here's a Stoic idea. What if instead of feeling harmed the next time someone, leaves a really mean comment on your podcast, perhaps, you just decide it doesn't bother you. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. And if you don't feel harmed, you never were. In this solo cast, I'm going to break down a few core Stoic ideas, how modern psychology actually confirms them, and then I'll give you a few practical Stoic tools you can use in your everyday life. Now, let's get into the zone. Stoicism was founded around 300 BC by Zeno of Citium, but the three Stoics most people know are Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. So who were these guys? Well, Epictetus was born into slavery. His name literally means acquired one, and his core idea is simple but powerful. There are two categories in life: what you can control and what you can't. In Stoicism, this is called the dichotomy of control. The only things you truly control are your judgments, your choices, and your actions. Everything else is not up to you. So the Stoic idea is do what you can with what you have, where you are, and then let go. You can work really hard on a college application, but once you submit it, the outcome is no longer in your hands. So there's no point stressing and worrying and attaching your peace to it. This is where some people misunderstand Stoicism. You don't need to be an emotionless robot. You can still care deeply about something and at the same time accept that the result is not up to you. A Stoic doesn't deny emotions. They just don't let the outside world control their inside world. Epictetus, who, remember, was born into slavery during the Roman Empire, taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you interpret it that matters. Modern psychology actually agrees with this. The locus of control is a concept introduced by Julian Rotter. It's basically where you believe control in your life comes from, inside you or outside you. And research consistently shows that people with a more internal locus of control, that is, people who focus on what they can influence, tend to handle stress better, feel more confident, and have better overall mental health outcomes. So Stoicism isn't about caring less. It's about caring with precision. Mark Manson makes a similar point in his best-selling book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F***. You have only a limited amount of energy, attention, and to give, so the real skill is figuring out where to direct them. Now, unlike Epictetus, Seneca was a Roman statesman who lived with extreme wealth and political power. Seneca said, "We often suffer more in imagination than reality." And that's something most of us can relate to. I certainly have spent time worrying about things that end up never happening, or assuming the worst when there's no reason to, or replaying and reliving the past even though I can't change it. Modern psychology calls this negative thinking patterns. Your brain is wired to detect danger, so it exaggerates threats, it fills in gaps with worst-case scenarios, it jumps to conclusions, and that's why anxiety feels so real and so dangerous, even when nothing is actually happening. This is also the foundation of modern CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. The idea is your thoughts influence your emotions, so if you change the thought, then you can change the feeling. Well, that's kind of just Stoicism in modern language. Seneca also wrote about anger. He said anger, if not restrained, is often more harmful to us than the injury itself. Think about that. Someone cuts you off in traffic, someone insults you, someone says your podcast sucks. The real damage isn't what happened. It's not what they said or what they did. It's what you do after. When you get angry, your brain goes into a kind of fight mode. Your thinking shuts down. You react out of anger. You can get defensive or lash out or just ruin your own peace. Meanwhile, the perpetrator has already forgotten about you and moved on with their life. And look, Stoicism doesn't say never feel anger. It says catch it early, slow it down. Don't let it take control. Stoics believe that no one is free who is not master of themselves. So if anger, fear, or anxiety is at the wheel, then you're in the passenger seat of your own life. And that's where the next Stoic idea comes in, this idea of Amor, Fati, which means love your fate. Epictetus laid the groundwork for this. You don't control what happens, you only control your response. So this idea of Amor Fati, loving your fate, it's not just about accepting what happens to you, but meeting it without resistance, even using it to your benefit. Saying, this is what happened, I can't change it, so I'm going to work with it. So instead of being pushed around by emotion or circumstance, you shift from resistance to participation, to progress. Now, of course, that's easier said than done, and no one philosophy can be applied universally to every situation. I get it. But living a life of Stoic freedom means learning to live in the reality you're in, even if you're born into slavery during the Roman Empire. To be clear, it doesn't mean give up and just accept misery. It means stop wasting energy fighting what you can't change, so you can focus on what you can. Because resisting things outside of your control just creates suffering, needless suffering. If your ship is caught in a storm, you don't argue with the sea, you adjust the sails. Now on to Marcus Aurelius, who was the emperor of Rome and most powerful man in the world. He wrote in his private journal called Meditations that he never intended to be published, and said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacle isn't a problem itself. The problem is how you meet it. Change your perception and the obstacle becomes material to work with instead of resistance to push against. Ryan Holiday wrote a whole book around Marcus's quote, aptly titled, "The Obstacle is the Way." He points out we'll always have obstacles, and even when you get past one, another will present itself. But anger, denial, and avoidance just causes more needless suffering. Instead of thinking that the obstacle is something to avoid or endure, think of it as something to transform into progress, an opportunity. Modern psychology calls this reframing. Instead of, "This is so terrible, why me?" you ask, "What can I do with this? How can I use it to my benefit?" Now, I get it, that's easy to say, but if something tragic and horrible happens, like your child gets very sick, for example, it's hard to keep that frame of mind. It's hard to say, how can I benefit from this? How can I turn this obstacle into an opportunity? Now, there might be some Stoic principles that could help you in that situation, but the truth is, Stoicism has limits too, and not everything is applicable in extreme cases. But research led by Stanford psychologist James Gross shows that people who reframe stress feel less overwhelmed, cope more effectively, and can perform better under pressure. As Marcus Aurelius says, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. And this overall Stoic idea is called Memento Mori, which means remember you will die. Sounds a bit grim, I know, but the idea is when you really accept that your time is limited, a lot of things stop mattering. The petty arguments, the need to impress people, the stress at work, the fear of taking a risk, the guy who keeps leaving mean comments on your podcast. And modern research in terror management theory, developed by psychologists Sheldon Solomon, Jeff Greenberg, and Tom Pazinski, shows that when people are reminded of their mortality, they tend to prioritize meaning, relationships, and long-term purpose over trivial concerns. So, Memento Mori literally means remember death. But really the message is remember life and what's actually important in it. So, okay, I've given you a broad overview of key Stoic players and ideas, but what are those actionable things you can do in your daily life? Well, number one is the morning premeditation. Marcus Aurelius says, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. This is a form of stoic premeditation, mentally preparing yourself for reality as it is, not as you wish it would be. The Stoics didn't expect the world to be fair because it's not. In fact, they prepared for it not to be. Another one is called the Stoic Pause. It's this idea that whenever something's about to make you angry or anxious, just catch yourself before you react. There's a moment where if you can catch yourself and just pause, just do nothing. That pause is where freedom lives. It's the moment your emotions try to take the wheel. I'm not saying eliminate the emotion. I'm just saying stop it from driving. And this one is my favorite, but at first glance, it can seem really grim, but stick with me. It's called the last time meditation. Because we will all die, there will be a last time we do everything. The last time you go for a walk, last time you brush your teeth, last time you smell freshly cut grass, or hear a song you love, or call your parents, or kiss your partner. Rarely do we ever know that it is the last time when it's happening. But if you did know, you'd live in that moment more presently and appreciate it so much more. You'd extract maximum enjoyment from eating that last bowl of pasta, embracing in that last hug. Even sitting in traffic for the very last time would feel different. Maybe you'd appreciate who you're with, or the fact that the air conditioner's working, or the song that's playing. So throughout your day, just pause for a few seconds and consider that whatever you're doing might be the last time. Because one day, it will be. So enjoy it. My closing point is, Stoicism isn't perfect. It doesn't solve everything, and it has plenty of limits. It even has things I disagree with, but I've taken what I've found to be helpful and discarded the rest, which in and of itself is pretty stoic. If you enjoyed this solo cast, consider subscribing, but if you don't, well, that's out of my control. So I'm not going to worry about it.